If you've been watching our videos for a while, you probably know that we love taking close looks at clone characters and seeing what makes them tick. We've talked about their tactical approaches and their personalities, and in this video, we're going to start looking at their different moral philosophies. On the outside, most clones had similar philosophies. They believed that whatever Republic law said was right, that good soldiers follow orders, and so on. While many clones came to these same conclusions, there was a surprising diversity in how they reached them. Clones, especially clone commanders, had surprisingly unique philosophical outlooks. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the personal philosophies of 3 clone commanders. All of them fell into the good soldiers follow orders camp, but you might be surprised by the different reasons they had for ending up there.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Let's start with Commander Gree. We don't see much of Gree in Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is a damn shame, because he's one of the most interesting clone characters out there. Far from being a cut and paste soldier archetype, Gree was an amateur anthropologist who would have preferred to spend his life studying alien creatures than leading the 41st Elite Corps. This love for other cultures ran so deep that Gree pretty much made it his identity. He chose his name in honor of an obscure and highly advanced species called the Gree, hoping that those who shared his passion for anthropology would notice and start a conversation. Given that, you'd think Gree would hate the Republic and hate his life in the Grand Army. As the property of the Galactic Senate, Gree was forced into the military, kept from fulfilling his dreams of studying alien cultures. Most people would resent the Republic for that, but Gree didn't. He firmly believed in the Republic and, like many clones, considered his orders sacrosanct. His role in the Grand Army of the Republic may not have been the role he wanted in life, but Gree saw it as his duty nonetheless. This was because the defining trait of Gree's moral philosophy was loyalty. As he saw it, he only existed because of the Republic, and thus he owed the Republic undying loyalty. On a more personal level, Gree was loyal to those he fought alongside, from his fellow clones to the Jedi generals he served under, regardless of any differences he had with them. Luminar and Julie, who Gree served as a clone liaison, was considered by many to be insufferably orthodox, something that would have clashed heavily with Gree's unorthodox tactical approaches. But Gree was still deeply loyal to Julie, respecting that she was willing to risk her life alongside him. Gree's intense loyalty came with a deep hatred for those he considered traitors. Betrayal of any sort was seen as all but unforgivable to Gree, which led him to hate any and all separatists regardless of their motives. He hated the would-be loyalists that betrayed the Republic, like Pharaoh Argus, even more. Gree's hatred for traitors ended up being the strongest part of his moral code, even stronger than his loyalty to his friends, as shown by his attempted execution of Order 66. Gree's actions in response to Order 66 were, of course, driven by the inhibitor chip in his head, but he was the sort of clone who would have executed the order even if his chip had been removed. Gree was very individual as far as clones went, but his loyalty to the Republic and his low tolerance for betrayal would have overcome any sense of loyalty he had to the Jedi on their own. Next up, we have Commander Cody. Cody was a bit of a cut and dry clone. If there was such a thing as a default clone commander, it was Cody, both in terms of personality and philosophy. He did have some traces of individuality, especially his keen sense of humor, which likely developed during his time spent with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Cody, more than most clones, was a connoisseur of dry humor and could even get passive-aggressive at times. You might think that this suggested that Cody had a bit of a different outlook than most clones, but you'd be wrong. Cody's philosophy was defined, first and foremost, by apathy.
Apathy is death.
Simply put, Cody didn't really give much of a sith about philosophy. He did what he was told because that was what he was supposed to do. He didn't really bother justifying that, probably because he didn't think he needed to. It was the reason he was created, and that was justification enough. He was loyal to the Republic, but unlike Gree, this really didn't have to do with a hatred of betrayal or anything like that. To him, it was just a job. As the Clone Wars dragged on, Cody's moral apathy developed into cynicism, something that ramped up dramatically after the rise of the Empire. He developed a general feeling that something was wrong about his life and the world around him, but he was still apathetic enough that he didn't bother analyzing what was making him miserable. He became a bit of a boomer because of this, and later in life, when the ranks of the Stormtrooper Corps began filling with non-clone recruits, he was known for repeatedly claiming everything was better back in the old days. We've saved the most interesting clone for last. If you're at all familiar with Commander Bacara, you probably know that he was utterly brutal, more so than any other clone commander. He was aggressive, outspoken, and didn't take any Sith from anyone, especially not his subordinates. Bacara was a man who saw pleasantries as a waste of time and would sacrifice anything to complete a mission, including his life or the lives of the Galactic Marines under his command. Bacara's outspokenness and dislike for pleasantries may make it seem like he was a bit of a rebel, but this was far from the case. Like Gree and Cody, Bacara was fiercely loyal to the Republic and was known to execute traitors on the spot and without remorse, as he did to Pt.1. This cocktail of extreme personality traits may seem odd, especially for a clone, but it makes sense when you learn about Bacara's training. Bacara received instruction from Pt.1, a journeyman protector from Concord Dawn, and adopted much of his worldview and philosophical outlook. At his heart, Pt.1 was a lawman, and he trained Bacara and his other trainees to think of themselves as lawmen as well as soldiers. This was problematic in itself. In the wise words of Commander Adama of the Battlestar Galactica,
"There's a reason why you separate military and the police. One fights the enemy, the state. The other serves and protects the people. When the military becomes both, then the enemies of the state tend to become the people."
Regardless, because of his instruction under Darwin, Commander Bacara adopted a philosophy that resembled real-world concepts of legalism. Bacara believed that the law was always right by virtue of being the law, and he saw it as his role to enforce it regardless of whether or not he agreed with it. He was loyal to the Republic, not because he believed in its values or anything like that, but because it was, in his view, the legitimate government. His motives didn't run any deeper. Bacara's rigidity and aggressive tactics owed to his legalist philosophy. In the real world, legalism espouses the centralization of political power, and Bacara managed the Galactic Marines much as a classical legalist would manage a government. To him, the men under his command had no purpose other than to execute his orders, and their ability to do so determined how much he respected them. In turn, he saw his purpose as the execution and enforcement of Republic law. This mostly manifested in staunch opposition to the Separatists, whose secession Bacara viewed as illegal and contemptible. Later in his career, it also manifested in his total willingness to execute Order 66. The Jedi, he believed, were planning to overthrow the government, and that was enough to get him to kill Pt.1, who he had been friends with for years. So that's our look at the moral philosophies of 3 clone commanders. But what do you think? Would you like to see part 2 to this video, analyzing a few more clones? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.